Hi there, and welcome back to the Mom and Mind podcast. I'm your host, Dr. Kat, and this is another episode of Behind the Sessions where I talk about some of the stuff that actually comes up during psychotherapy sessions with me and for a lot of people who are going to therapy. One of the things I see and hear a lot about are relationship challenges, and I'm not just talking about partner relationship difficulties. I'm talking about people who are having a hard time with their own parents. So, somebody who has just had a baby or is in the very early stages of pregnancy, postpartum, whatever it is during that time, sometimes are simultaneously coming to terms with their own parents. What I mean by that is there are a lot of relationship dynamics that get kicked up when somebody is becoming a parent. They reflect on their own life, they have this baby, and think more clearly about their own childhood and how their parents did or didn't show up for them, or are beginning to see ways in which their parents, their family of origin, the family they were raised in, how their parents might not have been supportive, or even more than that, might have been disruptive, abusive, neglectful, or emotionally unavailable. Now, I want to say before I get into this, as I do anytime I talk about new parents talking about their parents, is I'm coming from the place of understanding that, let's say, parents of my parents' generation, let's say, they may not have had a set of skills that helped them be the parents that they wanted to be. They might have had their own trauma, their own adversity, their own challenges that contributed to their, I guess, inability or lack of skill or lack of patience that they have with their children. I'm not parent blaming, I'm not parent shaming, I'm just stating the reality that sometimes our parents didn't get the parenting they needed, or they had lives that were very, very challenging and difficult and couldn't show up for us as the parents that they maybe wanted to. Now, what's challenging for me as a psychologist, as a therapist, to people who are coming in for help is they might be telling me about their childhood. They might be telling me about their parents' personality structure, things that they did or didn't do. And I am not meeting with the parent of the parent. I'm just simply hearing about what things were like and what things my client had to deal with or might be still dealing with. And so my client, my patient, that's the person I'm helping. I'm not, diagnosing my client's parents or other people in their family. I can only talk about things within the context of, some trying to understand more deeply what might have been going on with their parent that impacted how they parented my client, the person I'm meeting with. Sometimes that can fall like within a category of a narcissistic personality disorder or borderline personality disorder of my client's parent. Again, that's not confirmed. It's not something that I can diagnose. It's only a set of characteristics that I can glean from and kind of potentially theorize. And the reason why I need to do that is I have to understand the impact on my client. I have to understand how growing up in that environment might have impacted them so that I can help them understand themselves and heal from whatever it is that they're trying to heal from. Again, as a psychologist, as a therapist, we're not allowed to and we're not supposed to diagnose people that we are not meeting with. And that's for very good reason. And at the same time, we really have to understand the family systems that people grow up in to try and help them heal if possible. And furthermore, there might be times where, there's not like a personality structure that I can kind of theorize to understand what my client might be dealing with. There could be other things that were very clear, like a neglect. That if my client had dealt with neglect or abandonment by a parent, meaning like literally the parent left, and left my client in the care of somebody else, or didn't care for them in a way that was emotionally supportive or physically supportive to my client. And I'm going to be talking about some of these concepts in a deeper way in an upcoming episode, because I'm very fascinated by the ways that specifically things like a narcissistic personality disorder, how, let's say, a client of mine was parented by somebody who may or may not have had a narcissistic personality disorder, how that impacts their own attachment, their own parenting. And so that episode will be coming up with Dr. Marissa Long in a little while, a little bit down the road. Because our early experiences with our own parents shape and form how we connect with people, how we attach, how we bond, how both with the people in our family of origin and also with our own kids. When they come into the world, we are navigating a brand new relationship and we're trying to figure out what this means. We're trying to figure that out through our own history, through our own trauma. So let's say, for instance, I had a parent who abandoned me when I was young. And I felt for years that I was missing that connection to my parent. And, it left a scar, it left a mark, it left emotional pain, it left trauma. And now I'm coming into my own adulthood and I'm having my first child. Oftentimes, what can happen is that if I am the person who had abandonment, experienced abandonment from a parent, I, as a brand new parent, might be doing everything in my power to show up in every way that I needed when I was a child. That could mean full attention all the time to my new child. It could be setting myself aside entirely to be present for them. Not in a martyrdom sort of a way, but in a like, I don't want my child to suffer the way I did kind of a way. That can be pressure for perfection, making sure we do everything right, making sure they feel loved all the time. And while all of those are sort of noble pursuits, in some way they are a response and a pendulum swing to the abandonment that I might have experienced when I was younger. So that is an incredibly stressful parenting experience. To not only be trying to parent your brand new child in the best way that you know how, but also to not traumatize them in the way that you had been traumatized. It's so much weight emotionally to carry, and it leaves very little room for humanity. It leaves very little room for kind of quote unquote making mistakes or not knowing what you're doing. The pressure can become so intense that it can lead to things like depression, like feeling like a failure because you can't or aren't living up to this pressure you put on yourself. It can feel like anxiety because you're could be worried all of the time that you're somehow messing up your kid or somehow not doing a good enough job. It can show up as perfectionism, sometimes even as OCD patterns, where somebody could be obsessing about making sure that nothing bad happens to their child. And in order to make sure that that happens, doing everything within their power to keep them safe, to the point of not really even being able to function well in their own life. So these are patterns that happen quite often in therapy. I don't know if you've seen that meme or whatever it's called that, people who are going to therapy are in therapy because of people in their life who don't go to therapy or who never have. Well, and sometimes that's the case. Sometimes we are parented by folks who could have really, really used some long term therapy to deal from their own trauma in their own childhoods. Um, but they didn't get that healing because, hey, not that long ago, therapy wasn't a thing that people went to in any regular capacity. So, like healing childhood So, healing our own childhood trauma, let alone generational trauma, is a relatively new concept. So, in our kind of, let's say, generation of parents who are in and around, I don't know, mm, really like 55 to 25, I mean, give or take, it's kind of a wide range. Our parents might not have had access to seek out healing, to get to a better place within themselves and in their own life. And unfortunately, sometimes that gets passed down, it gets passed along. So then coming back again to that time where you are looking at becoming a parent in the process to try and be a parent, or you have your new baby, the things that we are sometimes blindsided by is that all of the sudden, with this new baby in arms, we are now having to deal with our own childhood trauma. It's incredibly difficult, like really not good timing. It's not what you want to be dealing with. It's not what you want to be doing when there's a brand new baby, or you're waiting for that baby to get here. So if we're in the process of like reflecting and re-examining our own childhoods, our own connection with our parents and how we've attached to them or not, it can run the gamut. It can be that you have a parent that you don't really have contact with, all the way to a parent who's incredibly intrusive. And I'm putting those two examples kind of at polar opposites, just to sort of create a range of experience. And there are many, many experiences within that range, and some that might even fall outside of that range. My point being is that our connections with our parents do have an impact on how we bond with our own children. And it can get really mucky and confusing and hard to differentiate what were the things from our past that impacted us and what are the things that we're carrying into our own parenthood journey. Sometimes those things are not easy to tease apart, and sometimes you cannot tease them apart. But what I do find really, really important in the healing process for people who are on this journey of trying to figure this out is to be able to differentiate that on some level and be able to kind of name, okay, hey, this pressure that I feel about parenting my own child might have connections to how I was parented. And it might not be something that I have to carry forward into my own parenting journey. I mean, just acknowledging something like that, giving yourself an option that you don't have to do what your parents did, how they did things, that you can have your own experience, that you can craft and create in the way that you want to. It's incredibly powerful. And that is part of generational healing is recognizing and realizing what happened maybe to your own parents, therefore maybe what happened to you, and the things that you do not want to pass on or carry on to your own children. I'm going to add a little asterisk here and say like this is not a perfect science. It's not like you can say, okay, that happened to me, and my parents, I'm not going to do anything wrong ever in my own parenting journey. I'm not ever going to like do something that messes up my kid. We make mistakes, and they don't necessarily have to be mistakes that are, connected to a traumatized past of our own or of our parents. People make mistakes because we're human. That's just a thing. And getting really comfortable with the fact that we make mistakes is important, because mistakes are part of the deal and mistakes are part of learning. So I'm not saying any of this today to say that you need to go into your parenting journey and never do anything that, upsets your child. That's impossible. What I am saying is that we have an opportunity when we're in this massive life transition, um, to reflect on our lives, how we were impacted, um, both in positive and negative ways, in ways that shaped us that we want to take into our parenting journey, ways that shaped us that we don't want to take into our parenting journey. And part of the reason why it's really important to acknowledge this and just call it out and say, hey, this is a part of what happens, is because we're, like I said before, often blindsided by this. It's something that's like a surprise. Now you got to deal with all of this other stuff on top of learning how to be a new parent. And that's overwhelming. And, with the help of, your own kind of reflection and looking into patterns, or going to a therapist that can help you sort through and understand how this stuff has impacted you, you can figure out how to be more of the parent that you want to be, or at least not carry some of those old traumas into the rest of your life, let alone your parenting journey with your new little one. But this is one of those things that contributes to depression, contributes to anxiety. And it's not always just, current life context and current stressors and hormones and stuff. There can be real complex issues from your own history that are now kind of being played out in your new parenting journey. So, hey, like if you have the opportunity to go to therapy and work on some of this stuff before you become a parent, then cool. But sometimes it comes up only in the context of being a new parent because, in those life transitions, it makes you reflect and it brings in a new reality for you to be comparing and contrasting and reflecting on. And just like, there are certain things that you can't know how it's going to feel before you're there. Once you're there and you're experiencing the thing, then you have a fuller sense of what it's like. Meaning, yes, you can absolutely do therapy and heal some things before you even think about having kids, and that's worthwhile, and definitely do that. And surprise, there might be some things that you can only see while you're in the reality of new parenthood. And those things come up to be reviewed, to be renegotiated, to be looked at. And while it's very, very painful, can be very, very painful, um, what I think is just the beauty of therapy and healing in general is that you can attain an even deeper level of healing, of understanding yourself, of potentially even understanding, your parents um, through a different lens, and potentially even feel better than you did before. Like these deep, deep layers of healing that might go back to birth for some of us um, is come up again for this healing opportunity. And this is what's so important about holding both during this perinatal transitional phase, coming into being a parent, is that it can be both incredibly painful and incredibly challenging, and you can learn a lot. There can be beauty in that. You can understand yourself at a deeper level. And if you so choose, seek healing around that. Get to a place within yourself where you can make peace with, or at least understand these forces that are acting upon you. So I'm excited to get into this type of conversation with a few of my colleagues in upcoming episodes, because the experience we have of bonding to our kids, of their attachment to us, it is incredibly important. And it's important for us to know how those same sort of forces acted upon us and how they might still be. And in particular, for people who have had parents who do fit into categories like a narcissistic personality disorder or borderline personality disorder, who haven't sought healing, I should say that, um, who uh, who haven't done some work on themselves or some reflection, um, you know, those types of relationships can really impact your attachment, and how you show up in relationship with other people. So I'm really excited. I don't know if excited is the best word. I'm looking forward to deep diving into some of this stuff in upcoming episodes on Mom and Mind. So, if you are interested in hearing more episodes like this, I would love to hear from you. Feel free to email me, drkat@momandmind.com. Feel free to find me on Instagram at momandmind and send me a message. If there are topics specifically as they relate to your own parents, your own history of your own childhood, and how that might be impacting your perinatal mental health journey, I would love to hear from you. And if you haven't yet, please find the Mom and Mind podcast wherever you listen and subscribe and follow and share these episodes so people can get the help and support they deserve. Thank you so much for being with me. Until next time.